All right, today the new opposition leader has announced their plan and number of people for the shadow ministry, and Sussan Ley will be on this program in the next couple of minutes to go through some of the decisions, to talk about the big task that is ahead, and a little of her personal story as well. I'm pleased that we're going to have a chance to talk to her about these things. Now, let's go through what you all know to be the case. Some people up, some people down. Now, obviously, Renewal, absolutely front and centre. Reality is, after 2 election losses, many of the people who were at the very front end of those 2 election losses are being moved aside or down. Reality of politics, reality of professional sport, reality of media, reality of every business is that not everyone gets a promotion. Sometimes just staying in the game is the promotion. Sometimes people move sideways, and yes, some people are punished for performance or a whole bunch of other personal reasons, and they start to move backwards. The difference between professional sport or the real world is that in politics, we know how long this is going to go for. There's a 3-year term. Some people will move further up, some people will be pulled back, and some people will come in from the cold. That is the reality. But obviously, after losing 30 seats in the past 2 elections, there are people who needed to come towards the front. Some of those people who are being brought towards the front, as you can see here, Ted O'Brien, as the Deputy Liberal leader, gets to pick whatever he wants to do, and he has chosen that he's going to be the Shadow Treasurer. Really important. Focus on small business is going to be where Tim Wilson is going to be. Dave Sharma is there when it comes to the money as well, a big brain fella. James McGrath, he's going to move to urban infrastructure. Michaelia Cash becomes foreign affairs. James Patterson, remember he was the home affairs guy, so he's had immigration, national security. Now he starts to broaden himself out, and he is a spectacular performer both in the parliament, in Senate estimates, and on television. So him in the finance portfolio, really important. Yes, people have been dudded. Jane Hume, essentially, out the back door. Will she come back? Well, it'll be up to other people to make mistakes and her to impress that it is time for her to return. Sarah Henderson goes from education out the back door. Michael McCormack, Barnaby Joyce, both former Deputy Prime Ministers. Now, remember, that in part is a decision by the National Party as to who they put forward, and then Sussan Ley makes her decisions about who serves. But let's not pretend there aren't going to be some noses out of joint. But again, the same team that's been playing for a long period of time, both in government from 2013 and then the elections of 16, 19, 22 and 25. Yep, some people are going to move forward, some people are going to move back. And I think all of these people are good people, so there's nothing personal about this. A lot of people want to talk about Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price. Really important that she, of course, maintains the shadow ministry. No, she is not in the shadow cabinet. I know that ruffles some. I'll let Sussan Ley explain in a moment or two's time why the decision has been made. But people that are her supporters are openly saying that it's about trying to broaden out the things that she's going to be focused on. Angus Taylor, Foreign Affairs. He's, of course, the chief leadership rival. Perhaps sending him overseas as a way to keep him busy. And Dan Tehan, he moves into new positions as well. This, in part, is what Sussan Ley had to say about her new team today.
Our team is one of strivers and optimists, of leaders and listeners. The new Coalition Shadow Ministry balances experience with new talent. It reflects the full range of our philosophical traditions, values and perspectives across our 2 great party rooms.
Now, as always, when you are handing out such prizes, there are not enough prizes for enough people that are there. If the coalition had not reformed, then there might have been almost prizes for every single person from the backbench all the way through to the deputy leader. But also what seems very obvious, apart from pulling some new faces towards the front, people like Angie Bell, great politician in and around the southeast of Queensland, people like Melissa McIntosh. She's been able to hold on to the Western Sydney seat of Lindsay, regardless of whether the Libs were in government or opposition, or even going further back as they did at the last election. She's going to be an interesting fighter. You've also got to balance, not just male-female, not just left-right, not just state here and there, but also remember that one of the roles of a shadow minister is to be the person asking questions of the minister. So say, for example, the Minister for Communications, well, they are in the lower house. The person asking questions of them, you would ideally like to have them in the lower house, the same as Foreign Affairs, Penny Wong, upper house. Hence why Michaelia Cash, as what I think is a continuing of her as the leader of the Senate, for the opposition. She, of course, takes on Penny Wong there. So there seems to have been in all of the different balancing acts an attempt to bring new, yes, some older faces move back, some people move sidewards, but you're also trying to match up. And I've got to say one thing in particular that I'm really looking forward to are questions like Angus Taylor in defence asking questions of the Deputy Prime Minister. I'm looking forward to Andrew Hastie in Home Affairs asking questions directly of Tony Burke. You see how these things all start to line up? That's part of the decision making. Again, will this be the team that will be there in 3 years going to an election? Probably not. Why? Because that's always the case. Is it the team that will be automatically and at some point into the future ministers in all of these portfolios? Well, logically not, given the position that the party is in. But is it more than a lick of paint? Is it an attempt to put new faces and to move to the next generation of people? Yeah, obviously. And sometimes that can be a screaming heap because, yep, all of these people are inexperienced. The government turns around and essentially points at an inexperienced opposition and drives that home as a reason why you have to re-elect a government. But as Paul Erickson said, and this is really important whether you like this information or not, my job's not just to tell you the stuff that you like, but to tell you the stuff that obviously the other people are telling us is what they believe to be their worldview. The Labor Party boss, Paul Erickson, now he said that one of the ways they were able to particularly go after Peter Dutton and many of the people who were in the key positions in the coalition at this last election, and yes, many of those were gross distortions or just outright lies, was that they had polling, constant polling for the past 3 years about what were people's perceptions of the previous government and what were people's perceptions of their performance in the previous government. And given that that government had not just lost, but lost handsomely, and then the remnants of that government lost again handsomely at this last election, part of the logic about the renewal here, again, like it, dislike it, Sussan Ley in a moment will ask the questions and you can be convinced or otherwise by her answers. But to give her an opportunity to explain these decisions rather than them to be explained or judged for you, I think is a good thing, especially when somebody is at the start of their leadership journey. Again, I've said all the way through, when there are big clangers, I'll call them out, but I don't see the big clangers in all of this. But when I talk about that renewal, I want to point your attention to the New South Wales Labor Party. Now, when Christina Keneally was wiped from office, this was a scandal-riddled government that the Liberal Party for 4 and almost 8 years was able to point to as you wouldn't want to go back to that, you wouldn't want to go back to that. So when Chris Minns was putting together his shadow cabinet, and yes, they were talking about a 4th term, not a 3rd term in office. From memory, there was just 1 or 2 members of the entire shadow cabinet that were even MPs in the Keneally government that had been blown away. So we've seen how brutal and effective the weaponisation of lies about a politician's past can be when it comes to the Labor Party. And obviously you don't make decisions that are just about fear of the Labor Party, but you want to take as many angles of attack off the table for you to be able to reset, reintroduce yourself and get the attention back onto a government. It's then up to a government about how many times it drops the ball, and when it drops the ball, do you have a shadow minister who can ask question after question, day after day, to put somebody on the ropes? Perfect example about this. Tim Wilson, in part, is going to have responsibility for small business. Do you know who has responsibility for small business in the government? It's Anne Ali. Now, yes, a former childcare minister, but essentially a person whose main role was sitting behind the Prime Minister and rolling her eyes and acting like everything that she'd said was either everything the Prime Minister or a minister had said was the most shocking or funniest thing she'd ever seen. Well, she, of course, now has responsibility for small business. I can't wait to see Tim Wilson versus Anne Ali. Don't you think that Anne Ali is going to be the one double-checking her notes rather than Tim Wilson, who, of course, very successfully was part of putting on the agenda of the 2019 election things like franking credits. So it's all about the contest, not just in presentation, not just in ideas, but also with an eye to the future. So yes, big benefit of the doubt will be given by this program to make sure that there is not a repeat of the last 2 elections. Now, can there be? You betcha. Numerically, if you have any seats in the parliament, you can end up with no seats in the parliament. But obviously, what's the definition of insanity? To keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. Now, I want the focus to be on the bad government. I want the shadow ministers to be the ones that can prosecute that argument, not for our amusement here, but for the wider public and wider media to be able to see. I want people who may well have voted for the Liberal Party and turned away from the Liberal Party to re-engage with it as an option into the future because of the people that are being put in front of them. That's all I'm playing here. That's all of the above the water and below the water currents of my attitude to this opposition and the decisions that are made in the next little while. All right, we're also going to have people on the show tonight who have been promoted, demoted. How do you deal with it? What happens? How do you make sure that it doesn't just become a festering sore? How do you work your way from out in the cold right back into the centre of government? We've got people who have lived that experience and they will join us a little later.